Hello YouTube, I am Lightly Salted and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to Uboat. I know what you're thinking, wow, crazy, Salted's playing Uboat, but what you didn't know is that this is another tutorial series. Yes, that's right my friends, since my original tutorial series was made back on 1.2.6, hotfix 3, and now we are blessed with 1.2.8 hotfix 4 here in late November of 2020, I've decided that we need an update. We need to get fresh about it. There are a lot more options than there used to be, so I thought we'd go ahead and dive on in. What I'm hoping to do with this tutorial series is make it a little bit different from my last one. We're going to try to steer away from 40-minute campaigns. We'll try to take this in smaller bites so it'll make things a little bit easier on folks that just want to know about the one thing. This still will be a complete top-down, absolutely as much information as I can think to give. However, with it being broken up into smaller chunks, with any luck, that'll help some folks out. So with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and dive on in to a new game. Okay, so this is all going to be information for the folks who've never played before. The game defaults you to U96. This is the Port La Rochelle at a difficulty of normal. And in all honesty, this is the funnest you're going to have pretty much throughout the game. La Rochelle, in my opinion, is the very, very best port. There's an awful lot of shipping lanes, there's an awful lot of fun to be had. You can go across the sea and visit North America if you want to, honestly, this is where it's at. You start off pretty early on in the war, 9th of January 41. So what about all these other boats? Well, all these other ones that have the normal difficulty down here, so 552 and 564, they simply leave from different ports at slightly different times, all the way up to June of 41. Honestly, I don't find those ports as fun, especially not this early on in the war. There's a lot less going on in those areas. So it's a judgment call. Anybody new to the game, I suggest U96. Okay, Salted, but what about these ones down here? Well, this is where we start kicking up into quote-unquote hard difficulties. So we are still very early on in the war. We're talking about November 41, and then suddenly September 42, 43, and then we get into very hard. So once again, these are going to be different areas you can take off from La Rochelle in 764. What you have to understand is it's later on in the war. So the escorts are smarter, the planes are smarter, they've got better equipment now. The upside for you is a little bit more of a challenge, plus when you start later in the war, your boat will already have some upgrades that are unlocked and ready for you to buy. As far as the very hard campaigns, 984 and 1055, again, same exact thing, except it's very, very late in the war. So we're talking about 10th of April 44 and December of 44. So these guys here, the escort ships are about as tough as they're going to get. Things are a lot more difficult to come by. Spare parts, fuel, torpedoes, stuff like that. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to get them in ports. So that's something you definitely want to look out for. At the same vein, you will have pretty much everything unlocked for your boat right away. So it's a judgment call if you want to dig that far in. Myself personally, I always like to start a fresh game and just start at the beginning of the war and work my way through. So for anybody new, I would suggest going with U96 on normal difficulty in the January 41 time span. Let's go ahead. Okay, so you're greeted with the next screen, and this is where you're going to choose a lot of things that's really going to affect your gameplay. Up here at the top, you've got a slider to set a realistic preset. So we've got entertaining, which is essentially as close to arcade mode as you're going to get. We've got a balance, and we've got realistic. Your first screen will probably have a percentage, I think about 62%. I've dialed this back and forth a couple times now. And it's all based on your selections. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. Okay, for audio language, this is going to affect how people speak to you, how your officers speak, so on and so forth. They have little sound bites that they make. You've got German and English. The German, honestly, it sounds better because realistically it's a U-boat in the 40s, so, well, they're going to speak German. The other side of it is the English sound bites are very cartoony. The captain will say things like, faster, faster, and he'll say it just like that, and it'll drive you crazy after a while. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. For new players, I suggest going with the German. Go ahead and give English a try if you feel like it, but you'll probably just end up giggling like I do. Travel system is very, very important here. Okay, so we've got realistic or dynamic, and we've got a little toggle, or a little bit of a look-see down here. Dynamic movement on the map will be faster and resolve in similar timescale as battles. That Honestly, that sentence doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I wouldn't expect it to make sense to most people. Realistic means movement on the map will be as in the real life. Very high time compression tools will be available to skip the time needed for travel. So I feel like this is a bit of a misnomer because they're making it seem like if you select dynamic, you're stuck going like crazy slow all the time. And that's not true. In dynamic, you have access to a ×1 time compression and a ×5. In realistic, you've got, I can't remember, something like ×12, ×48, ×1600, and ×6400. FYI to anybody going with realistic, no matter what I say, going at ×6400 speed is probably going to get you killed. Just trust me on this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the differences between the two. If you choose realistic, right here, you are stuck staring at your map screen most of your time because the game cannot... It can't run at ×1600 speed and show you the ship at the same time. It's just not possible. If you choose dynamic, you get to spend a lot more time looking at your pretty boat. So what are the downsides? In realistic, you get a stopwatch right in about this area here, and it's going to tell you the time of day, and it's going to tell you what the weather is today and what it looks like for tomorrow. It doesn't operate as an actual stopwatch. You can't time things with it or anything like that. You can move it around, stick it wherever you want on the screen, that kind of thing. You can hide it, and that's pretty much what you get. My personal choice is dynamic. I feel like it's a better way to play, and that's just because I like to look at my pretty game that I spent money on, and that's really it. AI difficulty. This one's going to be up to you. If you're just starting the game, obviously you probably want to stick to easy or medium. I prefer hard. I like when the AI has some kind of concept of what they're doing. Okay, so that's really all that does there. Normal, save mode, we've got normal and ports only. In normal mode, of course, you can save at any time. In ports only mode, you can only save when you're tied up alongside. So if you want to give yourself a bit of a challenge, if you want to make every run like do or die, go ahead and select ports only, okay? Realistic bilge. So this one's important because like in the real world, the U-boats would leak like a sieve. The spaces around the props, the periscope going up and down, people opening and closing the hatches, in the rain and the waves and whatever, your boat fills up with water over time. And that's especially true when you go deep. The water is forced into your boat at a much faster rate. Not ridiculously fast, like you're not going to sink right away, but it is going to be coming in the boat. So that's something you got to keep an eye on if you go with a realistic bilge. I personally like it. I think it adds a little bit of something to the game, but again, it does make it harder for you in that it's something you got to keep looking out for, and then you're thinking, you come across a convoy and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to dive and take this out, and it turns out you've got 7 cubic meters of water in your boat, and you know, you've got to get that out before you dive because you don't want to be thrown out. Anyway, long story short, realistic bilge makes it tougher, and water will be in your boat pretty much all the time, so that's something you want to keep an eye on. Expanded sailor management. Realistically, it doesn't really matter if you turn this on or leave it off. And the reason I say that is, even if you leave this unselected, there is still sailor management that has to be done, and we'll get into that at a later date. If you turn it on, you get more control over the automation of your crew. So if your idea of the game is to give everybody a tasking, tell them when to wake up, when to go to bed, what job to do during the day, so on and so forth for all of your officers and the vast majority of your crew, and you just want to set that up before you take off and head on out into the world and let the boat sort of run itself, expanded sailor management is the way to go. I personally don't like it. It's not what I want to play. I want full control of my boat at all times. So this is a judgment call for you. I will get into sailor management at a later time, like I mentioned, but if you select it now, you're stuck with it, and if you don't select it now, you're stuck with it. So it's your call. You'll see as we go on. Darker nights. Okay. The use of flashlights and searchlight may be mandatory in exterior areas. This setting does not affect the sight range of AI. Other ships always behave like the nights would be darker. All right. Darker nights, I'm not kidding you, when you operate at night on the surface, or even, you know, at periscope depth and you're looking for ships, you're not going to see anything. You might see the barest hint of the boat, maybe if you're close enough, but you're not going to see anything at all realistically. So if your idea is that you're going to be doing automatic calculations, allowing your crew to do the calculations for you, go ahead and throw this on if you want to. If you're a streamer, if you stream this game or make videos on this game, I recommend leaving Darker Nights off, because in all honesty, your audience will not be able to see anything most of the time. I prefer to leave it off just because, again, I think the game is pretty and I like to see it, and just staring into the darkness and waiting for the torpedoes to do their thing is not really my thing, so I personally leave this off. But that's what that is. If you turn that on, it's not kidding. Really, really Dark Nights. Collision damage. This one's pretty self-explanatory. If you turn this on and you bang your boat into a dock or another boat, you will take damage. If you turn it off, you won't take damage. That's really it. Hardcore aiming mode. So if we leave this off, whenever we get into sight or sound range of an enemy target, your crew will begin doing automatic calculations for you. It will take some time, but eventually they will get 100% solution. If you turn this on, your crew will never do the solutions. It's all up to you all the time, forever. We're going to leave it off just because when we get into the tutorial stuff, I'd like to show you the difference, so we'll go ahead and leave that off. Realistic Earth curvature, pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Ships that are really, really far away are going to be very, very hard to spot because they're going to be super low in the water as compared to your viewpoint. If you turn it off, the ocean is essentially a flat plane. So, yeah. Units, it doesn't really matter what you pick, honestly. The only thing that's going to matter is how you do your torpedo solutions. I personally like mixed, and the reason for that is I like their speed to be in knots, and I like distances to be in kilometers, okay? And the reason for that is I have a particular way of doing my own torpedo calculations in which I use a 3-minute and 15-second timing, and that works best for kilometers. Which means you could use it in, I want to say you could use it in metric as well, but I don't know for sure. The game is going to give you mixed as a default. I suggest you just go with it and then later on down the road change it as to whatever you want. This, I believe, can be changed on the fly in-game. Coordinates style. So we've got classic and we've got decimal. So if you go classic, you're going to get coordinates like 460933 north by 10906 west. If you go decimals, it's going to be 46.1591 north. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, it doesn't really matter. It's all up to personal preference. It's just how it's going to look on the map. Hide detection hint. So when you play the game, you're going to have a little eyeball icon roughly here on your screen, and that's going to let you know how much noise you're outputting, how visible you are, how visible you are to sonar, and whether or not you actually get detected. When you get detected, it will light up yellow, okay? So for a more in-depth experience, you can go ahead and hide this. You'll never know if the other ships have spotted you unless you can hear the alarm bells or see the rounds incoming. You'll never know how much noise your boat is outputting. I suggest for newer players, you go ahead and leave this unselected. Economic difficulty, I personally like to crank this up to hard. For any new players to the game, I would very much suggest going with easy or medium. And the reasoning for that is everything is so expensive on the hard economic difficulty. Like very, very expensive. So you're not going to start the game with a lot of money. So if you go ahead and select hard, you've got to be very, very careful with your choices as to what you're going to buy for your first excursion around the bay. So I'm going to leave it selected to hard just because I want to be able to show you folks what the difference is going to look like. And yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and hit next. And here you get to customize your skipper. Now you could give him a different voice, but there's nothing available. We can change his body type. We can make him a teeny tiny skinny fella, make him a big old jack fella, make him all chunky. We'll just sort of throw it there and hit apply. We can give him different shirt. This is very like sort of Fallout style kind of idea. We could give him suspenders if we felt like it. Hair color, complexion, you get what I'm trying to say here. So once you're done customizing your skipper, go ahead and click next, and you can put in any name you want. We're going to leave it as Klaus Graf just for the sake of argument, and hit accept. And now the game will begin. Alright folks, that's going to do it for this one. This was absolutely just beginning the game. And in the next episode, we're going to go over the screen, some controls, and their basic use. If you like today's content, go ahead and hit like. Maybe consider subscribing if you haven't already. Anything I didn't touch upon that you saw on the screen there and you wanted a little bit more information on, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. Until next time, I have been Lightly Salted. Thanks for tuning in. Bye now.